Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Catherine Weeks, Staff Liaison. It's 6:30, so I think we're going to go ahead and get the meeting started here. I'm going to go ahead and take roll to make sure that we've established that we have quorum for the evening, and then I have a small point of order before we get into the rest of the meeting. So I'll go ahead and take roll for this evening. Hill? Harrod?
Here.
Rankin?
Here.
Chalinsky?
Here.
And we have a new member with us tonight. Crystal Swearingen is here. So Crystal?
Here.
Welcome aboard to the board. All right, so a small point of order, and before we get into the part B of our agenda, which is communications, we're going to be electing officers this evening as well for the end of 2022-2023 year. Instead of having to have two elections, one for a pro tem to run this evening's meeting, I would maybe take a recommendation from the board to switch the agenda item for C to come before item B on your agenda. And if somebody wants to make that motion in a second, we could have a vote on that and then have our elections prior to getting the meeting going.
Catherine, I would make such motion to move agenda item C, election of officers for 22-23, to position B on our agenda.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Board Member Chalinsky, I'll second.
Okay. And then I'll take a quick roll. Take a quick roll. So, Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Chalinsky?
Aye.
And Swearingen?
Aye.
Okay, we have, the motion passes. So as part of our elections for the upcoming year, you'll need to make nominations and elections for the chair, vice chair, and also your secretary position, which is the staff liaison. And the planning department would put forward your current staff liaison, but obviously you are open to make other suggestions. So we can open it up for nominations when you're ready.
Catherine, would we be able to nominate a slate, or do we have to take each nomination individually?
I think you could nominate a slate if you wish to do it that way, and we could vote for the slate.
Okay. Okay, board members, what do you want to do? Who wants to be the trail boss for the next year?
I'm not chomping at the bit, but I'm.
Barry, do you want to be chair? Do you want to do it?
Sure, I would do it.
Okay, then we'll need a vice chair. I think next in seniority would be board member Rankin.
Sure, I'll be vice chair. Everybody's
Okay.
okay with that.
So we have a chair, a vice chair nominee, and then I think Catherine, I think if we called planning, I think that they would quickly refer us to Catherine's extension. So why don't we go ahead and nominate her for secretary? Is that right, Catherine?
Yeah, secretary of staff liaison, yeah.
Okay. So if that be the case, I would nominate board member Chalinsky as chair, board member Rankin as vice chair, and staff liaison Weeks as the secretary.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. I'm going to take roll. Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Chalinsky?
Aye.
And Swearingen?
Aye.
Okay, so we do have, the motion passes. So our new chair, Barry, if you would like to take over and guide us through the rest of the meeting, that would be great. I think you're muted. Yeah.
Yes, how's that for a very auspicious beginning?
Perfect.
So I need to pull up my agenda here. I believe the next item is whether or not there are any, or no, I guess the next item is no, not item B. We don't need to do that now.
Yes, we can do item B.
Okay.
We rearranged, yeah.
Okay, let's do item B.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so A of item B would be to acknowledge if there are any communications to come before the board. Staff does not have any additional communications. All the communications for the items were actually made it into the packet, so you should have got them with your packet.
Did you get that one? Yeah.
Okay, and the packet does indicate that one item is being deferred, correct?
Yes, just before that, if there's a disclosure of any ex parte communications or any abstentions that need to be made from the board members, those would be made now. So the chair would ask if there are any ex parte communications or abstentions.
Okay, are there any? Apparently not.
Okay, so that moves us to item C, which staff will let you know that one item on your legal agenda was deferred. So we just have the two items on the current agenda tonight.
Okay, so item D, public hearing regarding a request for variance B-22-00306. And this is regarding a request for reducing setback at 4319 Wimbledon Drive, submitted by Vanessa Weathers on behalf of Meek Incorporated, the property owner of 4319 Wimbledon Drive. So let's hear from staff.
Quickly, just before we get started, one item of change. We have Drew Bealby with us tonight. He's going to be presenting this particular item before you, so I just want to introduce him before we get started. Drew, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Drew Bilby with Planning and Development Services. As Chair Shalinski noted, public hearing item number 1 is a variance from the required side and rear setback for a structure in the RM12D multi-dwelling residential district, as found in Article 6 of the Land Development Code. As noted earlier, all communications have been added to your packet. The specific request is to reduce the required rear setback from 20 feet to 10 feet and the exterior side setback from 25 feet to 19 feet for the property located at 4319 Wimbledon Drive. I'll now briefly run through the 5 review criteria. Criteria 1 focuses on unique conditions based in platting or zoning. This variance originates from the applicant's desire to renovate an existing deck to the rear of the property. No other physical improvements have been discussed with the applicant at this time. Staff believes the subject property has unique conditions based on its platting and zoning. Structure.
Do you want to mute?
This is what you're doing.
You got it. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Let's see where we were. Staff believes the subject property has unique conditions based on its platting and zoning. The structure has remained unchanged since its construction in 1984. The existing restrictions caused by the site's platting and zoning restrict the ability to renovate the structure due to the legal nonconformance of the deck structure being within the side and rear setbacks. The subject parcel was platted and recorded as Lot 4 of the Racket Club Number 3 subdivision on March 9th, 1988, but before was part of one whole lot where the 6 original duplexes were constructed. This is important because the building setbacks for the original duplexes were applied to the perimeter of the whole lot, not the individual duplexes. This lot satisfied the density and dimensional standards required for a lot in the RMD zoning district under the previous 1966 zoning code. The lot now does not satisfy the current requirements for the RM12D zoning district since the Racket Club Number 3 subdivision platted each of the duplexes as their own independent lots. To conclude this section, staff believes the subject property exhibits conditions of uniqueness based both in platting and zoning that may warrant this variance from the city's dimensional standards. Criteria 2 is potential adverse effects upon the rights of adjacent property owners or residents. Staff believes reducing the required rear setback for a lot in the RM12D district will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners. The subject property is surrounded by other residential uses to the south, east, and north. Criteria 3 is about unnecessary hardship. Staff does believe that requiring the applicant to comply with the code required 25-foot exterior side and 20-foot rear setbacks will interfere with the applicant's basic right of property ownership and could deprive the owner of his property without compensation. The subject property has not changed its building footprint since it was constructed in 1984. The removal of all or most of the deck to become code compliant does constitute an unnecessary hardship. A variance request to the setbacks will be necessary to file a building permit when updating the deck and thus does constitute an unnecessary hardship. Criteria 4 deals on adverse effects on public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. In staff's opinion, granting this variance to reduce the required setbacks will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. The request would be contained within the parcel owned by the applicant and no size changes will be made to the existing deck, just an update to building code compliance. Criteria 5 is the general spirit and intent of the code. In staff's opinion, the updating of the property's deck to building code compliance will not impact the intent of this section. The goal of creating predictable building envelopes does not change with this variance request. The applicant has stated that the updated deck will not be any larger, so structure encroachment will not occur with this variance. To conclude, staff recommends approval of the variance request to reduce this required rear setback from 20 feet to 10 feet and to reduce the required exterior side setback from 25 feet to 19 feet for the property addressed as 4319 Wimbledon Drive. That is the end of my notes. I know both applicants are present, and I am available for any questions the board may have.
Okay, do any board members have any questions for the staff at this time? Okay, then let's hear from the applicants.
That would be me. I'm Dan Wilkinson. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we're just really trying to update the deck as it stands. It's been on the house since it was built in 1984, not anywhere near to current standards. And we're trying to do an update of the exact same size deck that's there. So our goal is to bring it to current standards and bring it within current building codes and make it safe to use. As it stands today, it wasn't even bolted to the house. It was just sitting on the stucco on the back of the house. So it survived that way for 30 years, but certainly not optimal building standards. So that's and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those, but that's what we're trying to do, is just update it and make it safe.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I have one. Without getting too far ahead of ourselves, we received a number of letters in the packet from individuals expressing concern about this application, that the desire of the applicant is to actually add to the structure, not just to replace the deck. So I'm wondering if you could address that concern.
You're asking me that?
Yeah,
We haven't added, we're not adding anything to it. There's no, I mean, it's 8 feet by 32 feet, and that's what our submitted building plan was, to rebuild it at the same size. I'm not sure what they mean by adding something to structure, but there's nothing else that we're doing size-wise that's changing. I mean, what we submitted to the code team was the exact same size as what's there. We're literally just tearing down and rebuilding the exact same thing. We have to put cement pylons in the ground and meet current standards, but there's nothing else being done size-wise that's changing anything. The steps will be in the same spot. The deck will be exactly the same size. I mean, that's our plan. And that's exactly what we've submitted for approval. And that's what it'll be. I mean, we're not going any further back. We're not going any further out to the side. We're literally rebuilding exactly what's there. There's no additional structure being added to anything that I'm aware of.
any other questions? Okay. Anyone else speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. At this time, I would like to ask if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak.
Catherine Weeks, staff liaison. There are members in the commission room. We can see if they wish to speak. I know a lot of them have submitted letters. Is there anyone that wants to get up and speak to the board members at this time? Did you all submit letters for the packet? Would you like that known? Okay. Yes, correct. Yes, and there's 3 individual groups here, or 4? 4. So there's 4 individual groups here, but all of them have stated that they sent communications in that are in the packet, and just want to ensure that you all have read the communications that were received. They don't have any additional comments at this time.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Yes.
I'm Mike Reiling. I sent in a comment. I live at 4304 Wimbledon Drive, down the street from where this is, and I think I've talked to most of the neighbors. Nobody cares about the deck. Fine building the deck, but the problem is, our understanding is that if this is granted, then in 5 years, somebody decides they want to tear out the deck and build an addition. There's nothing that prevents that at this point, since the setbacks have been changed. We originally talked about it being conditional upon applying to a deck only, and that was fine. But once we learned that, you know, hey, this could be done, and then in 2 years or 3 years, a new dwelling could be built, that's a problem. And we don't want a 4-bedroom duplex there. That would be a big issue. There isn't a lot of parking in front of this house, and the parking along the side there's no parking. So that would really spill into the neighborhood. Nobody's opposed to the deck. Nobody cares about the deck, really. That's fine. But apparently there's no way to ensure that granting this variance won't allow the owner, current owner, or a future owner to build within the footprint. So that's the opposition.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Reiling? All right, we appreciate your comments. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
There's no one else that wishes to speak at this time in the city commission room.
Would it be possible to hear Mr. Reiling's point addressed by experts on the board?
They may discuss it in a moment, yes. So someone in the audience is asking if there will be discussion about the concerns that have been addressed.
Yeah. In fact, I'll go ahead and we'll wait a minute. If there are no other comments, I think it would be in order for us to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to do that?
I'll move to close the public hearing portion of this meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, staff
Motion in a second.
Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Shalinski?
Aye.
Swearingen?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion carries.
Okay, so we bring it back now to the board for discussion, and I will ask the staff, does the board have the authority to limit the variance for certain purposes, or once it is granted, does it mean that any type of building can take place within that area?
Do you want me to answer that? Okay.
So Drew Bilby with Planning Development Services. The second part of your statement is correct. Basically, once this variance is approved, that building envelope that is now available is available for any building, whether it be a deck, whether it be a structure expansion.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else on the board have any questions or discussion? All right. What's your pleasure? Does anyone have a motion? Don't all talk at once.
Can I have a discussion point? I'm sorry, I may have missed that window.
No, go
Chair.
ahead, please.
My question / concern is, this is my first meeting, so I'm just trying to get a lay of it, and I understand the staff's recommendation and the things that they're talking about specifically to a deck. It sounds like a lot of the neighbors' fears are about an Airbnb, additional structures being put on. From what I understand, you cannot have an Airbnb in that residential neighborhood, or is that outside our purview anyways? Is that something that I shouldn't even be thinking about?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please, staff.
From staff's, okay. I didn't know if that was for staff. So,
Yes, sorry.
yeah, so that falls under a use classification. And the Board of Zoning Appeals purview is not related to use. So that is handled under other building codes or other land development codes, whether or not it's zoned appropriately. They have to maintain their occupancy limits and the number of unrelated individuals. So they may not be able to expand or utilize that property for that particular use as it is now. This particular variance is only for the dimensional aspects of the land. And so to clarify, yes, if you are granting the variance, you are expanding that dimensional footprint that something could exist in. Whether today it's the deck, the rebuilding of the deck. If in 10 years somebody wanted to take the deck off, make the deck smaller, do a small bump out on the house, that is something that could potentially happen. It would not be related to use. They still have to follow all the land development codes related to use, whether or not they have the right number of individuals, whether or not it can be rented out to the number of units that it's rented out. That is not related to the variance request. Hopefully that clarifies it a little bit.
It does. Thank you for that. Because I think I emailed you earlier my other question just about could we have conditions on the approval. So just wanted to make sure we hear everyone's perspectives and viewpoints. Because I can sense that they have some concerns about certain things, but I want to make sure we're right in our window of what we're supposed to be deciding on. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you for your question and discussion. Any other members of the board have any questions or discussion? Do any board members have a motion?
I guess I'll start the discussion, or maybe just be a discussion. Going through the staff report, I was originally thinking, they're recommending it, that we approve it. We should probably go ahead and approve it since they're not seeing much wrong with it. But when you get through and you read the letters, the concerns from the neighbors, and it seems like they're in full opposition of it showing up, at City Hall and online to kind of state their point, and that, they're fine with the deck replacement, obviously, but they have concerns what could be allowed with this variance if it gets granted. Unfortunately, it sounds like you can't really condition it that they can only replace the deck with X by Y dimensions, which is, I think, what would make everybody happy here, but I'm not sure.
Travis, do you have any thoughts? You're muted.
I think you're muted, yeah.
The neighbors seem pretty concerned about somebody actually building more square footage onto the structure. One of the things that strikes me is I look at the overheads and the street views, and it looks like it's pretty there's pretty dense foliage blocking the street view of the property. So I'm not sure that if somebody put something on there, anybody would even see it or anything, and I don't see how it would obstruct traffic or anything. But once again, it's more of a use issue. I mean, for the stated purpose that the applicant's before us tonight, staff has done the analysis, and they believe that the 5 conditions are met to allow the variance.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with concluding that this doesn't potentially adversely affect the neighbors or the public health and welfare when we have a situation where there is so much opposition in the area. It seems like the people who live there might know as much as we do, or the staff, about whether or not there is an adverse impact. I understand that people are not opposing a deck. They are concerned about the potential of enclosed square footage. And I think it's a real shortcoming of our process that we don't have the option to approve a variance for specific purposes, but we don't have that authority. So we are faced with potential negative impacts down the road, or taking a chance that it's really not going to happen. And I think that's why people are having difficulty here. But it's our job to decide one way or the other. So I'm hoping somebody will make a motion, and then we can see where the thinking of the board is on which way to go. I suspect if we had the option of approving a variance for the purposes of a deck, we would probably get a 4-0 vote in favor of that. But that's not within our purview. So, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'm just rereading the letters included in the packet from the neighbors. One person's talking about they think this will encroach on the driveway. I don't think we're approving anything that's going to encroach on the driveway. There's a lot of concern about use of this property for short-term rentals, which is really beyond our purview. And I'm still looking. Some of these people specifically state in their letters, as Mr. Reiling stated, they don't have any opposition to a deck, which once again is the stated purpose of the application before us tonight. I would simply point out that, if this property is being used improperly for, owner occupied short-term rentals, there's regulations, code within the city for dealing with that separately than, than this body. So I think, having looked at the information before me, I would make the motion to approve the variance as recommended by staff.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? I'll ask again, is there a second to the motion? Okay, I think the motion dies for lack of a second. So does somebody have a different motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the variance.
Is there a second to that motion? Well, as the chair, it is not typically my place to second motions. But when there are just four of us, I don't know.
You can.
Crystal, do you wish second or no?
Not at that motion. I still have some questions and concerns. So my apologies. I know there's only four of us, so really I have to make a decision which way I'm going to go. But like I said, my concern is I agree with the variance of doing the deck. That makes all the sense in the world. And if point of order is me not having discussion now, we can let that motion die and then do the discussion. However, we need to set that up. But I guess the way I'm weighing the interest of the neighbors and weighing the interest of having the deck is if they're already using it as an Airbnb, the concern is in the future, if they add more room to it, it can be a bigger Airbnb and if that's not our purview, if we're just looking at them redoing the deck and adding the setbacks for that to be done. I'm just trying to make sure I'm looking at it solely in the right lens. So that's just a lot of words. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to be clear.
No, you're doing great. And I think the issue is exactly as you stated, the use of the property is not before us. And if the property is being used out of compliance with city codes, there are remedies for that, but they are not in front of this body. What is before this body is whether or not to change the allowable envelope for building to take place. The applicant is stating at this time that they wish to replace the deck. But there is the possibility in the future that this owner or a different one could decide to add more enclosed square footage within that envelope. And so if we vote yes, we are voting in favor of what is being proposed now, as well as that possibility. If we vote no, we're essentially saying that the deck can't be rebuilt, nor can any other building take place within that footprint in the future.
And Chairperson Shalinski, I would make a point of clarification that actually the motion before us, Board Member Rankin's motion, is to deny the variance, which is to find that it doesn't meet one or more of the 5 conditions that would allow the variance. That's the motion that's before us. So actually, if you voted in favor of Board Member Rankin's motion, you would be denying the variance. There would be no building, no nothing. So I will go ahead, in order to get us off of the starting line, I'll go ahead and second Board Member Rankin's motion. I believe that we can proceed to a vote, unless you can discuss the motion before we take a vote. Not railroading you, Crystal.
No, I have one more question. And you guys, I'm so sorry to hold this so long. So it sounds like the deck is unsecure and unsafe is what it sounds like from the letters. And it's above ground. So there's going to be some code requirements when you have a property. You have to have some type of deck. If you're above certain feet, you have to have treads. So is there another option to build a deck to make it safe for whoever's living there? Or if we don't do the variance? I know we're going 8 feet by 32 feet. Can it be smaller within the setbacks, or is this because there's no other way to do it? And I guess that'd be a question for Dan, but.
I mean, technically we have 2 sliding doors that walk out on the deck.
Yeah.
That are, I don't know, I haven't measured it 5 or 6 feet above ground. So that would be unsafe for anybody that's living there. I guess we have to put steps down or something. It's not much different than the deck, but I mean, certainly we can work within that if that's what's being required. And I would like to add, the neighbor had hers approved to replace her deck. She worked with Natural Breeze.
Setback?
She's in the same setback as I am. And that happened several years ago with Natural Breeze remodeling. And hers was totally rebuilt as well. So she had that approved probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago when she rebuilt her deck. And it's the exact same size as what was on the existing house. So, and that's all we're trying to do here is rebuild it to the exact same size.
Okay, thank you. So, any further discussion? Okay.
So I guess I do have a quick question. Once the vote is done and you guys either approve or deny it, what do we do to make it safe at that point? We just put steps down to gravel and call it good? Is that, I mean, we have to do something.
That would be a question for staff. And so I would, as a point of order, I'd ask that we call the roll.
Okay, staff liaison Catherine Week. Herod?
So I am, right now it's Board Member Rankin's motion, which is to deny the variance. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. I will vote nay. I will vote against the motion.
Okay. Rankin?
Aye.
Shalinski?
Aye.
And Swearingen?
Nay.
Okay, so it's a tie vote because tie votes are basically a failure to approve. It's in essence a denial. So it's a 2-2 vote, and that is a denial.
Well, it's a 2-2 vote on the denial.
Correct.
Yeah, which means we failed to approve or disapprove something. So
Correct.
it acts as a denial.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So, and just for Mr. Wilkinson, you'll need to get with building permitting and talk to them about the dimensions that are available to you and what the options are if you wish to, put steps in or a smaller deck or whatever that might be.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we will proceed now with item 2. Consider a request for variance B-22-00308. This is to within a RS7 zone to reduce a front setback from 25 feet to 23 feet for the western part of the lot, and from 25 feet to 21 feet for the frontage that is identified as curve 74. This is at 631 Daylily Drive, submitted by Aaron Urban and Nick Berger on behalf of Aaron Urban and Laura J. Philpott, the property owners.
Okay.
Staff, can you please give your report?
Yes, good evening, Catherine Weeks, staff liaison. Again, this is for the second item on your agenda, located at 631 Daylily Drive. The request is to reduce the front setback. There's 2 lines of delineation on the setback. There's a straight portion and a curved portion, which is why your request reads the way it does. It encroaches slightly on the curved portion a little more. So the reduction on the straight portion is from 25 feet to 23 feet. And then the request on the curve would be 25 to 21 feet. So staff is going to go through briefly the 5 criteria for review. The first relates to whether or not the request arises from such conditions on the property that are unique and not ordinarily found in the same zone or district, and they are not created by actions of the property owner or applicant. The subject property was originally platted in 2004 as Lot 26, Block 1, Stokegate 4 Addition. The subject parcel was zoned RS2, which is a single-family residence zoning, and that district at the time of platting had the same 25-foot setback. Today's code, the RS2 has converted to RS7. However, the setbacks have remained the same. So the code standard for the front setback is still 25 feet. The intended use and buildable area of the property has remained the same from the time of platting to the time of construction, which is a single-family zoning district intended for detached dwellings. The existing residence was built in 2017 per the Douglas County Register of Deeds records. And at that time, again, as I mentioned, the setbacks for the property were 25 feet on the front setback. Setbacks equally apply to all lots in the district at the time of construction. And this lot, although it may be shaped slightly differently, is not unique to other lots in similar districts that are on cul-de-sacs or edges of cul-de-sacs. New construction is meant to conform to the parameters of setbacks and be designed accordingly. Things like site context, slope, shape, orientation, all of that takes place during the design phase for new construction. At the time of construction in 2017, the house was constructed to the furthest most front of the property at the building setback line. And those design options for the current characteristics on the house were made at the time in 2017. So staff's of the opinion that the first criteria is not met because the conditions on the property are not unique and are not ordinarily not found in other similar zoning districts. The second criteria, that the granting of the variance will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners. In staff's opinion, that requested variance would not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners for safety or hazard impacts. But staff does feel, however, that granting this particular property the right to expand their building envelope is a benefit that is not granted to other properties at the time of construction. So staff does feel that could be considered an adverse effect for adjacent property owners. So staff did not feel that criteria 2 was met. Criteria 3 deals with the specific definition of unnecessary hardship and whether or not the context rises to the level of unnecessary hardship and warrants the granting of a variance. In staff's opinion, strict adherence to the code required building setbacks does not constitute unnecessary hardship. And although lot shapes differ from others on even the same block face or in the same neighborhood, that does not prohibit design and construction to meet the parameters of building setback regulations at the time the property is built. The setbacks and the zoning have not changed from the time, the setback from the time of platting or construction. So staff does not feel that this rises to the level of a necessary hardship. The Land Development Code does also permit things like overhangs in architectural details, and they are permitted to encroach up to 2 feet into the setbacks. There might be options to currently address the shade situation that the applicant is referencing. And certainly those things could have been addressed at the time of construction when that property was constructed or when that structure was built. So staff does not feel that criteria 3 was met for unnecessary hardship. Criteria 4, whether or not this adversely affects public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare. Staff's opinion, this requested variance does not impact or have adverse impact or effects on any of the above mentioned. This request is limited to this particular parcel and does not really have spillover effects. So staff does feel that criteria 4 is not an issue as far as meeting the variance request. Criteria 5, that granting the variance desired would not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of this chapter. Staff's opinion, granting the setbacks would be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the Land Development Code, and granting the requested variance is not consistent with previous findings of the board and also not consistent with the general nature and spirit of the Land Development Code. Again, that current residence is a newer residence who was built 5 years ago. The setbacks and zoning were known at the time of construction, and any design preferences or features of that structure could have been addressed at that time. So staff does not feel that it meets criteria 5. And so in conclusion, staff is recommending denial of the front setback variance based on the findings in the staff report. And I would be happy to stand for any questions or clarifications if you should have them.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions for planning staff? If so, please unmute yourself and ask away. All right, there being apparently no questions at this time, I would like to see whether the applicant would like to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me? All right, Aaron Urban, sounds like I got an uphill battle here, but hope not take too much of your time. So I'm not a designer, so I will say I didn't even think about it when we built the house, which way it's facing. So we get a lot of the north sun just kind of burning through that door. You touch it, you could burn your hand. As I have 2 little kids, but you know, you kind of notice it more as I got older and had the kids. But so we're simply wanting to just come out kind of where if you have the site plan, just where the sidewalk is to the door, just going straight across, which some of it would encroach on there. My builder, Nick Berger, is here, and he might be able to better explain some of it than I can.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Great, okay. So this lot, we were trying to utilize as much building capacity as possible to give him the house that he needed. And the lot, if you look at it on a topographic map, it really steeps off very, very sharply to the north. So what we did was we kept it as far to the south as possible to give to give Aaron and his family as close enough usable space as possible. So we did everything we could to do that. So he went ahead and built a nice sized deck on the back, put a patio cover on it to help. But the practical building envelope here on this particular lot is very difficult. In fact, the neighbors are dealing with a very similar issue. And what we're proposing to do is to come forward, which would be to the south on this lot, about an additional 4 feet, basically of concrete space and a covered porch, which would consist of 3 posts that would be of like building materials with the existing house. And Aaron and his family have gone through the process of getting with the neighbors, and there has been no issues and no negative feedback on it. In fact, most of them said, go ahead, just do what you can. And I'd be happy to hear if anybody had any problem with it. But we're trying to utilize as much space on the front as we can. The house, it was a very difficult lot to build on. So we went vertical, did a 2nd floor, and now trying to give it usable space for outdoor activities. The back, if you were to, again, look at a topographic map, really just falls off. It's great for sledding, but it's not really great for little ones to have out there or even enjoy. Difficult to mow, difficult to maintain. So what he's wanting to do is come out to the front and extend his sidewalk over to the east and put some more cover on the existing soffit, the eyebrow that runs horizontal across the front of the house. And it would come out 9 feet total, of more building space. And again, open, not like a fence or a deck. It would be concrete space. So everybody from the road, and I even drove by it again today, and there wouldn't be anything visually in the way up to the front door. But he really does have a unique position here with sunlight encroaching on the front door. It's convecting on between the glass of the storm door to the door. It's delaminated several times. So not only that, we can contend with that. We're just trying to give it some more usable space on the front, and looking for permission to come forward a little bit.
Do any of the board members have questions for Mr. Berger?
I have a question. I'm just trying to get as much situational awareness as I can. So you're telling us that the house is sitting there on the south side of a hill that slopes downward as it goes north. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yes, that's at the very apex of the hill at that point. Yeah.
And so you had to slide the house south on the lot.
Correct.
To be able to avoid that hill.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. Is this a slab house? Does it have a basement or anything?
No, it's a slab house.
Okay.
So we really had to pull it forward in order to get as much buildable space as possible to meet the requirements of the neighborhood for minimum space, square footage. So that's why we ended up going vertical, to give it more livable square footage as much as possible. Because that lot, it was a treat to build as close to that setback. In fact, if you look at the curve table, it's right at that corner, on that southeast corner. So we have some buildable space right now. We have 28 foot from the setback line to the garage and 2 more foot to the house. And the current setback right now is 25 feet. So ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to come out 9 feet from the front door. So that's why the setback request would be to 21 foot for the patio and then the posts that would support an awning over the front door and that front dining room window.
Okay.
So again, not even an enclosure of sorts, more of a covering.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other board members have questions? Okay, I have one. As I always do. I went and looked at the site, and you know, the streets are certainly not the standard grid that we're used to in the old part of town where I live. And I had to snake around to take a look from the bottom of the hill, and wow, that is quite some hill.
Good work,
And I could see why it would be a challenge to build on that site. So my question is this proposed, I'll call it covered patio or covered porch, it going to run the entire length of the front of the house from the front door to the east, or is it just some part of that?
Yeah, I think aesthetically that'd be the best way. I think if you cut off some in the middle, it might look a little awkward there for, you know, value of the house.
Okay.
And just to piggyback on that, it would start at the garage and go east. It wouldn't be the entire front. It's just from the garage to the east.
Okay. I'm trying to get a sense of it because this variance proposal is really in two parts. There's the straight part of the street, and then there's the little, it's called a curve. It's sort of like a cul-de-sac, but it's really not a cul-de-sac because the street sort of does a 90-degree bend there. It's almost like a cul-de-sac with a dog leg off to the side of it. So it would encroach in both areas as you are proposing it.
You're correct, yeah, and you're right. I'm glad you were able to go out today because it is a very unique lot. Even with the surrounding neighborhood, that particular lot has a double frontage. So it has the frontage on the front, and then down at the bottom, there's another road. So as you can see, if you're looking at the site plan, we really hit that right on the head with the building envelope, right on that curve table, in order to give it the maximum amount of square footage and also work with the lot. So yeah, it's as you can tell, we were working with something that was kind of difficult, and now we're dealing with something that 5 years down the road didn't anticipate seeing.
I'm just trying to look at the stated reason for this request, which is that the door gets really hot, and yeah, 3 doors in 6 years is a lot of heat. But I'm not convinced that the 21 feet near the curve really necessarily just addresses that particular issue as much as the 23 feet for the western, whatever it is, the western 53.24 feet. So I'm wondering if you could address that.
I guess I'm a little confused on Mr. Shalinsky, your question. Are you referring to where it would begin at the garage and then going east?
I'm just looking at the application.
I see.
The application is suggesting that a setback of 23 feet, 25 to 23 is being requested for part of the lot, and then from 25 to 21 for the curve on the adjacent street.
Okay, so I think I can provide a little assistance there. So it's 25-foot setback from the front to the house and also from the curve table to the house. And if you look at the setback, we are right on that. So we actually have some buildable space on the front of the house the way it is right now until you encroach on the curve table. So the front door, we have 2 foot to the garage and then 3 more feet until we actually hit. So the 2 plus 3, that gets us to the buildable setback line. That's why we go from the 25 to 23, because we're trying to bring that out, total of 7 foot there. That's why when you get over to the curve table, it would actually be encroaching more into the curve table only because of where it's oriented on the lot. It's difficult to envision, and I wish that our second site plan would show that potential line that would go through the current curve table. We don't have that.
Okay.
Chairperson Schlinsky, could I inquire a little bit?
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to gain awareness. You're going to like my first question. You're not going to like my second question. So here we go. So the first question, I think you've told us, that basically that covering you want is going to come out to where I can see the existing sidewalk poking off to the east of the driveway, right?
Correct. Yep, that's right.
So, and I think what Chairperson Schlinsky was kind of getting at, and you want to go over what? Do you want to go over to the corner, the east corner of the house with it? Is that what you're trying to do?
That's correct. Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, right.
And so as you keep pushing east, you start pushing into that setback at the curve.
That's correct.
Because there's a curve there.
Yep, you're right.
Okay. So here's the second question. And I don't know if it means anything to anybody but me, but I'm just wondering. So at the time of construction, let's imagine you had another $200,000 to work with. Could you have pushed this property 20 feet back on the lot and just dug into the backside of that hill and made it a walkout? Would that have been permissible where this house is built if you had the desire to do it?
That's a really good question. A difficult hypo to answer. But I would honestly say no, because of the amount of rock that it's sitting on right now. It is possible once you dig past that rock underneath that we could have done that. But when talking to the builders on either side, they hit a lot of rock. So even when we were digging footings, we were hitting a bunch of rock ourselves. So anything's possible.
I think what you're saying then is, with a reasonable amount of money and effort, it would have been prohibitively intensive and expensive to go dig out the north face of that hill so to make this a walkout, right?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. In fact, we're working with some engineers on one that's about 4 lots down right now. There's the last lot on that road. We have an engineer that's working on a site plan for us, and some of his recommendations are pretty stringent in that he almost recommends that we not build on it, and because it was the last lot over there, and because of its steepness, and because of the amount of fill that's on it. So I'm still reading through his verbiage and what he's saying, because the homeowners really want to build on it. So we're happy to oblige, but we still need to be careful. But this particular one, it really is pushed as far to the front, to the south as possible. If we were to go back to the south, knowing what I know now, I'm really glad that we stayed with what we did because of what we're finding down the road. I framed a couple of the other houses down the road for other builders, and I found that they had very similar issues with footings and working with very unsettled soil in the neighborhood. So by doing what we did and staying on top of the rock, we kept Mother Nature's footing and kept it in place, and it went on top rather than take it out.
Do you do a lot of, I think you've just told us that you're looking at developing a house. It looks like 4 lots to the west. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And then you've also framed out a couple other houses in the area for some other builders. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Do you feel you're familiar with this particular area as far as building homes?
Pretty familiar, at least on this side of the road.
Okay.
Back to the other side, I'm not.
Hold up. My
Okay.
question is, it sounds like there's some unique qualities to the lots and the houses on these lots due to the conditions of the land. Is that right?
That's very true. Yes.
Things that you wouldn't typically have to deal with, if you were building, the same house somewhere else.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for the question.
All right. Do we have any other questions from board members? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Can I just say something real quick?
Oh, I guess I should ask if there's anyone else that wants to speak.
You're fine.
Go
I just
ahead.
wanted to state, it is a great neighborhood. I know pretty much all neighbors on both sides and around the block because I got a lot of funny texts and calls when they got the letter, but nobody opposed, and they all kind of understood what we were going for and know that we're not going to make an eyesore of anything. We only want to enhance the property and protect it, from the sun there. So just wanted to add that in there.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Urban? All right, staff, is there anyone else that you're aware of who would like to speak to this?
So that was the applicant's time, but there is no one in the city commission room to speak on this item.
And is there anyone on Zoom? If so, please unmute yourself.
I don't believe there's anyone on the Zoom call either.
Okay. So, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll motion to close public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Rankin, seconded by Swearingen. Staff, please call the roll.
Yeah, staff liaison Catherine Week. Harrod?
Aye.
Rankin?
Aye.
Shalinski?
Aye.
Swearingen?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Very good. All right, we will bring this back to the board then for discussion and or motions.
Appreciate all your time.
Board members?
This is staff liaison Catherine Week. Would the board entertain any additional input from staff on this particular item?
Sure.
I think, why don't we get there? We'll get there. Let's have some
we'll get
discussion
there.
first.
Okay.
Let's give staff some raw meat to chew on, because Catherine's already got something on her mind. But I'll state this. So, how many times? Yeah, well, let me state the good news. In 2 years, I'll be gone, and Catherine won't have to wrestle with me anymore. The bad news is here I am. But, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So here's the thing, is I'm looking at number one, and it's been very cleverly written by a very competent, member of our planning staff. But I look at some of the language here at the bottom of condition number one, and there's lots of catch-all language that, hey, this should have been considered at the time of construction, and you're building on a slope, you're building on a rock. Yeah, but at the same time, I'm not sure that the code expressly says that. I mean, the code isn't really that laser focused, and so we're dealing with a house that's sitting on a hillside that's apparently a bunch of unstable rock. And so it presented some issues. I was kind of looking to see if, if maybe this property should have just been dug into the side of the hill and been a rock and been a walkout. But the builders here telling us, no, the engineer says that's not a good idea. Better to sit up on top of the rock and not disturb the rock. So I think we're starting to get into some uniqueness there, because, a walkout would have been, I think, a good fit for this property. But then again, it's not a good fit for this property. And so they had to build up on top of it. When you look at this house from an overhead, it's clearly smaller than its peers. And that smallness is an indicator of the uniqueness of this lot. I mean, it is clearly smaller than its neighboring peers. So this catch-all language at the bottom of condition one, I don't think it's used properly. I think when we start talking about this lot and what they were forced to deal with on this lot, with a reasonable expenditure of money and resources, I think that we do find uniqueness here. That is not something that, was caused by the owner. So there, I've thrown that out, and now I'll be quiet for a little while.
Okay. Anyone else have comments or questions? All right, Catherine, I will give you the opportunity to respond.
So just so you know, I don't mind if the staff report is nitpicked, so that's fine. But I will state that staff does not feel this meets the criteria, not just because of the general language in criteria 1, but the applicant himself has stated that there is buildable area to address the issue that is noted in the application. They've stated that there's an additional 5 feet of buildable area at the door area near the garage that they could build out to. There is also that exception in the code that allows for overhangs and architectural features to extend a further 2 feet into the setback. So in essence, there's 7 feet there that is available to them to provide shelter or shade for that front door. It does not necessarily need to extend to the east to encroach upon the setback further than it does. And just to note the lot characteristics, yes, whether or not it was feasible to do a walkout or other design alternatives at the time, there is still area available on the side yard. There's quite a distance from the side lot line that could have been addressed at the time to add additional square footage. And the entryway could have been recessed. So there were options, and there are still options today. And what the variance is designed to do is address instances where the owner's property rights are being infringed upon by the code as it is written. And staff does not feel that in this case it met those criteria for the variance to be granted. So hopefully that kind of answered some of the questions about where staff landed on those criteria points, but I just wanted to clarify that there are options currently available today, as even stated by the applicant this evening, in this meeting, so.
Thank you. Any further board discussion? Would anybody?
This is a tough one. I'm just going to say, I think that Catherine's, I think her advice to us is well taken. I do think there's uniqueness here, but then I get to condition 3, you know, and as Catherine pointed out, there might be an off-ramp here for the applicant as far as a way to get some shade and some relief that doesn't, you know, that he wouldn't need the variance for. And if I can't find number 3, then I wouldn't be able to find number 5. So I stick to my guns on condition 1, and then, you know, staff agrees condition 2 isn't in play. Condition 4 isn't in play, but 3 and 5 still are. If somebody can find ways around 3 and 5, you might find willing ears right here. But if you can't, then we might have a problem.
Well, I think your analysis is pretty good on that. I definitely feel like condition 1 has been demonstrated sufficiently. The topography here is really, really extreme. I mean, I saw it, and there weren't a whole lot of options for going any further to the north or building a bigger footprint. They really did need to go to the south. But there is still some space within the current building envelope to extend some kind of shelter over the doorway in compliance with the code. So, is there really a hardship?
I guess I'll kind of piggyback on what Barry said. It feels like we want to see a way to give this, but there's a way to meet the reason for applying for this variance. But yeah, all 5 conditions are not met.
I mean, I'll just say that rightly or wrongly, I guess I have a lot more sympathy for 2 feet into the straight line than I have for 4 feet into the curve, because that really is getting well past the door. And the door is really, preventing some, and I'm not minimizing the fact that heat comes in the windows as well, but there are ways of dealing with that. It's not the same concern as the doorway is. Any more discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Crystal, do you feel like you want to make a motion?
No, but I don't have any discussion either, so I won't have you guys start motions and then have a lot of questions. I'm kind of the same opinion of you guys. I don't think it's a unnecessary hardship, which I think is one of our 5 criteria. And I think I know this neighborhood very well. I sell real estate in Lawrence. I know these slopes and these hills, and it'd be nice if they could come out a little bit and maybe edge it back in. I don't know. I don't build houses, so Nick would be a way better expert than me. But yeah, I appreciate your analysis because it's helping me learn a lot. But I'm going to hold off on making a motion this meeting until but
All right,
Travis,
I'm excited to see the first one because I'll know that you're passionate about it when you do. I don't want to make the motion. So Barry or Adam, you're gonna do it.
All right, nobody else is going to do it. I'll make a motion. I'll motion for the board to deny the variance as it does not meet all 5 criteria.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I will request that staff call the roll.
Yep. Staff Liaison Catherine Week. Harrod.
Aye.
Rankin.
Aye.
Shalinski.
A reluctant aye.
Swearingen.
Aye.
And the motion does carry.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for the consideration.
For your time, yeah. Not trying to do anything wrong.
Best of luck to you in figuring it out. Okay. Item number 3 is deferred. Do we have any miscellaneous business to come before the board?
Catherine Week, Staff Liaison. We do not have any miscellaneous items or business to come before the board. Currently, as we sit right now, we don't have any applications in for next month, but we are still going to meet. Even if we don't have items, we'll meet briefly. We will have 2 additional new members next month as well, so we will have a full board again. And our application deadline is actually tomorrow by 3 p.m., so there could still be an application that may trickle in tomorrow. But that's where we sit currently.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I was going to make that motion, Travis.
Oh, no, I withdraw my motion. I withdraw it. I take it back.
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion was withdrawn, so Crystal, I'm going to take that as a motion to adjourn the meeting, and we are looking for a second.
I'll second.
There it is.
All right, seconded by Rankin. Staff, please call the roll.
Yeah, Harrod,
Aye.
Rankin,
Aye.
Shalinski,
Aye.
Swearingen,
Aye.
and thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.